Here's how I wrote a 50,000 word book in just 3 months. Over the last couple of years, I've been creating content to help software developers get their foot in the door in tech. And this book is really the book that I wish that I had when I was first starting out. But today, I want to talk about the process of writing a book and also kind of how this came to be. First things first, we have to start with the idea for the book. In this case, this is called The Part-Time Programmer, an easy and proven way to teach yourself to code. The idea came from a lot of different followers who would reach out and message me. They would tell me, what should I go into tech for? Some people were going into tech for money. Other people were looking for an exciting new career. And there were plenty of people who had limiting beliefs behind it, such as I'm not good enough at math, or I'll never stick to something long enough to see it through. And so I saw a pattern with this. It wasn't necessarily about the skill of programming. It was more about the skills that you need to build to learn something like programming. So what do I really mean by this? Well, I decided to start doing more extensive research on what it takes to learn a new skill. And I found so many great books about rapid skill acquisition or retaining what you learn, and all those books have kind of helped me understand of what I did back in the day to learn the skill of programming. And so this is just one part of the book, which is how to teach yourself a skill. But there's a lot more to that, such as how do you build the habits so that you can be successful in learning a skill. And of course, there's lots of great habit books out there. You have BJ Fogg's work on tiny habits, and you also have James Clear's work on atomic habits. But nonetheless, habits were really crucial to even learn a skill in the first place. And so I thought I'd talk about that as well in the book. But then I was kind of getting more questions around career advice, and people are asking, how do I ask for a promotion? Or how do I negotiate my offer? Things like that. And I thought to myself that my 10 years of experience would really help other people. And so I wrote a lot about those topics as well. These are things like how to build a great resume so that it's really easy and glanceable, and also how to interview better. But the funny thing about it all is that I'm not really an expert in any of this. I do have a lot of experience in it, and that's really the purpose of the book. You see, this book to me is about how you get into the mindset, how you build a learning system for yourself. And of course, what skills do you learn and how do you learn them very quickly? And so I talked about kind of the why I wrote the book, which is a lot of people reached out, I saw a common theme, and I decided to write about it. But let's also talk about the how, because I think writing a book is extremely intimidating unless you have a system underneath it. Now, I had a really simple system. I had 3 months, which is about 90 days to write the book. Now, if you do quick math around this is about 500 or so words per day that I needed to write to get to that 50,000 mark. And for those of you out there, 50,000 words is about a 200-page paperback or about 300-page Kindle or ebook. And so I had a daily goal of about 500 words that I would have to write each morning or at night. But before we go into the boring part, which is more or less setting a timer, waking up, and doing the rep, I want to talk about how I structured the book so that I can be successful every single day. So with the big idea of what this book is about and who this book is for, I then thought, okay, how do I separate this into chapters that will make sense for the reader? And so I came down to something around 11 or so chapters that I thought would be useful for somebody, where you can just skip chapters if you want and find the chapters that will actually really interest you. Now, once I had each one of those 11 chapters kind of mapped out with a title that was kind of something like mindset or system or skills, I would then kind of go and mind map all these different ideas for the sub-chapters in each one of those. So for things like habits, I would kind of talk about how you can build good habits and also how you can debug or kind of fix your bad habits. And each one of those chapters is a great opportunity for writing about them for those 500 words every single day. Of course, some of those sub-chapters were a lot more than 500 words, but 500 words is a lot if you really think about it. 500 words on most paperbacks is almost the whole page. And so I kind of followed this idea. I want to say it's from like Stephen King or somebody else, which is try to get in 2 pages of content every day if you can. And these are pages that are just pure writing, not really much editing or looking through it again. And so once I kind of had all those topics and I knew that I would aim for anywhere about 500 to 1,000 words or 2 pages, I would just kind of get to work. And so I would just get to it. And every morning or at night, I would go and set this timer. This is the time timer. You can set it for up to 60 minutes and you can kind of visually see when it's going down. So whether I would hit that 60 minutes or I'd hit my goal word target, which would be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 words, I knew that I could just kind of walk away from it when I'm done. And after you're done writing and throughout the week, you're also going to have a lot of ideas for your book. So I always keep around a pen and a note card, and I will write down those ideas or where they should be kind of stored and have kind of a central collection of all these note cards, and I'll show you that in just a second. And so if the idea was really simple and I can just go back to what I was writing that day, I'll just leave the note card out and I'll get to it the next time I write. But if it's not something simple and I need to revisit it, I'll take this note card and I've got this note card box, whatever you want to call it, and I'll put them into logical categories and just kind of set them in there and then put them aside until I'm ready to revisit them. Now, here's some things that I learned about writing a book in the first place, and I kind of want to share it with you if you have ever thought about writing a book. The first part is that a lot of your book might already be written, you just have to get it out in paper. That really means that it's in your head and you need to get it out somewhere. For most of this book, it kind of just came out and it was really easy to write. Once I had all those chapters and sub-chapters done, I can just write about them and it kind of just flowed through. The second thing is that you'll kind of notice that I have a system around ideas and gathering them and times that I'll actually apply those ideas. I have kind of done a lot of research on different writers and what they do. I've looked at Stephen King, Ryan Holiday, a lot of these different writers and them sharing their systems and kind of adopting them. The whole note box thing that you saw earlier, that's something I think Ryan Holiday learned, and he has a cool little YouTube video about how he does his whole system with every book, every reference, and so on. But needless to say, if you just want to use a notebook or you want to use an app like Notion to track all your ideas, that works fine as well. I kind of like the physicalness of the box and also the note cards because you kind of feel more in touch with what you're writing about. And so once you're kind of done with your goal of say 50,000 words and you writing those 500 to 1,000 words every single day, you kind of come with this rough draft of really time to just edit it. And you're gonna see a lot of things that are really bad about it, like certain paragraphs that don't make sense with each other, or grammatical errors, or just syntax or space issues with what you're writing on. And I gotta say, the editing part was honestly the worst. It took the longest time, and I'm not that great of an editor, and I wish I would actually let somebody else do that because it's really hard to edit your own material. For me, I was kind of self-publishing this book, and I thought that I don't really need to work on editing too much. I just need to make sure that all the content kind of makes sense, and that's kind of what my editing was. And of course, once you're kind of done editing, you can go ahead and publish it, and you can share it with the world. And I think once you do that, that's where you kind of get a little bit more feedback as to whether the book was a success or whether it was a flop. This book, I've never published a book in my life before. I've never self-published. I do write blog articles here and there, but this book to me was a success. Before it was even published officially, I had a lot of people who supported me for pre-orders, and I knew it wasn't just my family. I had a lot of people from my community who kind of reached out, was really interested in the book, and pre-ordered it. I also sold it on different platforms like Podia so that people can just download it instead of having to go through something like Amazon. And every single week, sometimes you'll be surprised, you'll sell a couple copies, or weeks will go by dry. But that's like the beauty of writing a book, is that your book can kind of sit on a shelf, whether it's digital or whether it's physical, and it can just sit there and be at peace until somebody who needs that book can find it. And on my self-publishing journey, after about 3 months or so, I realized that this book should probably reach more people. At first I thought, well, I did all this work and I should be paid for it. but I was thinking about it in the wrong sense. You see, most of the people that I actually wrote this book for, they can't really afford the book, and it would actually help them out if they can read it for free. And so I did just that, and you can grab a copy of the book on my website for free. Yeah, there's a link in the description below if you want to grab a copy. But before I end this video this week, I just kind of want to talk about the tips that I have for you if you decide to write, whether it's a blog, whether it's a book, or whatever you might be writing. The first tip is that you should have some type of consistent schedule. That means you do it every single day so that you can build the habit. The second thing is kind of map out what you're going to be writing about. If that's a title, great. If that's a word of inspiration, great. If it's a sentence or a thought that you had previously, use those as starting points because they really help you kind of flush out what you're thinking about. The third thing is know your reason of why you're writing in the first place. For me, it was to help my community and to help all the different people who are trying to break into tech. I thought that if I wrote a book about what I wish I had a decade ago, I think that it would be helpful for other people. And last but not least, I didn't really talk about this much in the video, but find ways to be inspired. It can sometimes be a grind if you're going to be putting in 500 to 1,000 words every single day for 90 days. And you need to have some type of inspiration here and there. So I would recommend that you read a lot and you listen to different books or podcasts or just other people talking, and keep exposing yourself to new ideas. And when you have a new idea, you grab a note card, you grab a pen, and you write it down. And the fifth and last tip that I have for you is really, really simple. I talked about it earlier. Write things down. Write down your ideas, write down your thoughts, journal often. Just get your mind on the paper if you can. This is just going to help you, and it's going to free your mind so that you can just write what you need to write. But that'll do it for me this week. If you like this video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. As always, we'll see you next week.